Hey, good morning. How are you, Tim?
I can't complain, I guess. I'm breathing.
A good day. What's the saying? I'd rather be vertical than horizontal. That's for sure.
I don't know, man. It was pretty I get the sentiment, but it was pretty snuggly and warm in the bed this morning. So
Oh, I get it. I get it. Man. All right. Well, it's Tuesday. So it's time for us to do our weekly Tuesday Tim and Tim show. I'm very excited about it this week because we are going to talk about how we made our first hire. Her name is Kathy Zinn, and she is going to be our executive assistant that is helping us out with all of the other shit that we never get to or that we're always scrambling to complete. Tim and I, we talk about who, not how all of the time. And it's very easy to talk about the principles of that book, but it's very difficult to implement them. So, Tim,
yeah.
why don't you talk a little bit about how we met Kathy and your experiences with her and how she came into our life and why we picked her?
Yeah, so I'm ecstatic to have Kathy on the team. So I actually met Kathy years ago in my banking life, my IT banking life. We worked together at Wells Fargo for 6 years, and we actually knew about each other prior to that because I worked on a merger at Wells Fargo that happened to be actually it was Wachovia at the time. I was working on a merger at Wachovia, and we were buying a company out of St. Louis, um, AG Edwards, and that's where Kathy was working. So kind of came across each other then. In 2016, I took over a team, and she was working on that team, and Kathy was basically my right hand person at the bank. Allowed me to go kind of do strategic stuff with our business partners while she kind of kept the team in track and on course, if you will. Which sounds a little bit familiar to what
Mm,
you and I have been talking about, right? Like
mm.
how the hell do Tim and Tim stay on track and and stop dropping the ball and some of this stuff we need to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm very glad that you know her and had brought her. I mean, when we first talked about hiring somebody, you were just like, dude, I know the person. I already know who we're gonna hire. I was like, okay, whatever, Tim. But after we had some conversations with her, I clearly saw that, personality wise, she was a good fit, and she's the type of person that we can tell her what we're looking for, and she'll just go do it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of exactly what we need. Like, I'm not a micromanager. In my days at the insurance company, I didn't micromanage my employees. Um, and I don't think that anybody should. I mean, one of the biggest things that I've learned about managing people is to get the hell out of the way. Let them do what they do. As long as they reach the target or the goal, it doesn't really matter how they get it done. It just matters that it gets done. And that's a really, really hard thing to learn and actually, you know, follow through with. And it was probably one of the most difficult things that I had to do when I was managing people was get the hell out of the way.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm really excited about that because man, there's a lot of stuff, and we could talk about these things. There's a lot of stuff that is repetitive actions that you and I find ourselves scrambling to complete. And it looks, from the surface of social media, it looks fine because we meet all of our we do the same stuff all the time, but it's not easy. It's not done for like I want things to be automated and I want there to be like, standards that we have and somebody else being responsible for setting up certain things and doing those little tasks that don't seem like a lot, but then it's week after week after week after week of the same thing, and it always gets pushed to the bottom of the pile until it's due immediately. And does it get done? Yes. But it also there's this level of like stress that happens up here because you're just like, oh shit, I didn't do this yet. And do it right now. And then, it gets done and it's fine. And we have the reminders on our calendars and all that stuff to do it. But like we're at the point now where we want somebody else to be responsible to do those things because it doesn't make the best use of our time to be focusing on a lot of little things.
To
Oh
do
my
these
god,
things. To do these things.
yeah.
By the way, this color was chosen by my daughter.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Throw her under the bus there.
Okay. Yeah, to do all those little sticky pad things,
Right, right. It's just somebody that can help us get things done. It's leveraging other people's time. And ultimately, this is a really good fit for everyone because she wanted the flexibility to kind of work when she wanted and where she wanted, which is great.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, we didn't want somebody that was there for like certain times every single day either. So it really just made sense.
Yeah, yeah, and finding somebody like this is really great. Because one of the things that Tim and I talked about, Vitaly and I talked about was, do we go get somebody like this, or do we look for like a virtual assistant? And one of the things we kind of came down to, and this is like a who not how principle, right? Like, let's just be transparent here for a second. Like, you can go get a virtual assistant in the Philippines or something like that for $5 an hour, right?
Hmm.
Or
Or
you
less.
hire some, or less, yeah. Or you hire somebody in the United States, and it's going to cost you a bit more. But at the end of the day, what Tim and I knew was that we had like a 3-month period where we had to get some of this, just kind of this low level coordination process stuff done. Like, we needed it done, and we did not have the time to sit with somebody in another country and kind of hold their hand and get them up to speed. It was literally like, hey, here's 5 things we need done. I don't care how you solve it. Here's our goals with this. Now go figure it out and solve it. And that's the kind of that's the kind of resource Kathy is, right? She has that experience. She doesn't need hand holding. You can give her a list of 3 things and not talk to her for 7 days and come back the next Monday, and she'll be like, "Hey, I went and researched this, and here's what I recommend."
Hmm.
That's the kind of person we need. So that's not a $5 an hour,
I was just gonna say that comes at
job,
a premium, you're
right?
not gonna get somebody that's a, virtual assistant in the Philippines for 2 to 5 $7 an hour that's gonna be able to produce that level of work and be an independent thinker. Are there people out there that can? Absolutely, like, we're generalizing here, but at the end of the day, you get what you pay for, and really the goal for Kathy is to identify all of these systems and processes, create systems and processes, document them, and then we'll have a conversation with, hey, do you think this is somebody that we can hire a virtual assistant to handle for us? Because Kathy, one, you're way more expensive, and two, you're way more talented to be working on other things that are more important instead of like a repeated remedial task.
Yeah, and Kenny, you're spot on. There's nothing more scalable that's going to change the game than being able to hire and delegate to VAs. That is
Hmm.
absolutely true. But in my experience, at least in my experience, and I've been working with offshore resources for a very long time now. My experience is you got to have it to a certain level of coordination and documentation in order to hand a lot of that over. To just hand it over and kind of let them go on their way. I've even utilized some of them to. I originally started out trying to utilize them for like social media stuff, and guys, I'll admit to you, I could hand off a lot more of my social media, but I don't right now because I what I struggled with was finding somebody who would kind of do social media in my voice, if you will. It was very template driven when you use a VA, at least in my experience. And I wanted things that sounded a little bit more genuine coming from me. So I made the conscious decision of, hey, I'm gonna spend a while doing it myself, and then maybe at some point I'll hand some portion of that over. But for now, I that's literally me doing that stuff. So
Yeah,
um,
I think there's something to say there too. Is just that you can hire VAs to do anything, but there are
right,
certain things that I believe are your value added items. And I personally think that somebody like you and I should be the one answering the messages because people are looking to reach out and connect with people like at least at our in our you know at our experience level and where we are in our careers today, it makes sense for us to be building those relationships and connections and answering. Like that's the work for us, right? We should be doing the work that nobody else can do for us, and that is finding deals and building relationships with investors and brokers and like relationships in general. Everything else ultimately could be delegated out, but under that tree of building relationships is answering the messages on social media. So that's kind of where I fall in that line of I don't know if or even when I would hand off something like that, but it would have to be very far down the road because one, I personally enjoy connecting with people and listening to what they have to say, and listening to their needs and like how do you help them? You can't help them if if you just have a virtual assistant that has a bunch of canned responses or LinkedIn canned responses that don't really go anywhere.
Yeah. You raise a good point because I genuinely enjoy kind of like talking to some of these
Yeah.
folks and trying to help them out, or I don't know, they ask my opinion, and by the way, it is my opinion.
Right.
So don't get mad at me when I'm wrong. Um, I enjoy having those conversations and kind of and chatting through those things. Like one of the best 3 days that I spent recently was at the last conference I went to, where I don't know, it was kind of humbling actually. Like a lot of people kept coming up to me, asking my opinion, asking my advice and stuff like that because they've seen some success that I've had. So they translate that into this guy knows what he's doing, and I'm like, hey, listen, I'm taking action more than anything else, but I'll be happy to share, my opinion on things. And
Yep.
those conversations were awesome. They were really really cool because it felt like I was actually kind of, I don't know, giving something back to the folks who were just starting out, who were where I was at one point in time, and that was really cool. It felt good.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of the thing that I harp on all the time of like provide value with no expectation of return. You you never know what relationships are going to bring, but being able to provide a little bit of clarity or answer a question or something for somebody, it does bring a sense of fulfillment or joy of being able to, change someone's life. And it's, it's little, right? But it's consistent actions over time that ultimately add up to big value, right? So I think that in terms of the social media thing, like keeping it in house or like individually, if you want to call it, is still something that's really important to do. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, it's all something that's can be delegated. Just depends on the level of the activity that you want and the personal relationship that you're trying to build.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Mm,
What's something you think you'll have trouble delegating ever? Like you never want
mm.
to do it.
Something that I'll have trouble delegating. Ooh, God, that's really good, man. You got me stumped on that one. I mean, do you have
That may
one? I
be
mean, you must have one if you asked me the question.
that may be you may have just answered the question. You may be like, man, I'm gonna delegate everything. Like
I
I'm
know. Well, I was gonna my what popped into my head, but as I thought about it, I was like, I don't know if I could delegate underwriting. But at the end of the day, I can delegate underwriting because it's something that I review and sign off on as like the CFO role. And then I was like, because I actually enjoy doing that part too, though. So that was kind of the follow up on that piece. But what is something that I don't know if I could delegate to somebody else to do? And just walk away from entirely? I really at this point in time is a really good question. I don't know at this point.
Yeah. For me, one of the things, this will sound a little weird. One of the things I really have trouble letting go of is paying bills. Um,
Paying bills.
Paying
Interesting.
bills, man. I
That's
I
something
don't.
I love having other people do. I mean, I get everything in my life is auto draft except for one, and that's the one payment I keep missing.
I man, I have a really hard time letting go of that. Like I don't know. I don't know if it's a span of control kind of thing. I'm not sure, man. But I really have a hard time getting my head around letting that piece go.
I get it. I
Um,
mean, it's also like a sense of security knowing that something is paid on time. But yeah, for some reason, I don't have that problem. I'm literally emailing back and forth with our new property management company down in Alabama about paying the bills for the bank and the insurance and all those types of things. And all my credit cards and rent and everything are on auto draft. So like there's only one payment that I can't set up on auto draft, which drives me nuts. And I keep missing the payment. But everything else, man, it's just I don't have to worry about it. It's one of those things that are stress is relieved because I don't have to worry about making sure that it's paid. Now, there is one downfall to that. I look at the credit card bill less because it's just paid. I'm like, all right, money's
yeah,
there, bill's paid, cool. All right. And that's probably a fault of my own where I should probably go through those charges a little bit more with more scrutiny in order to make sure that everything is legit, but I've never come across anything that wasn't legit before. So,
yeah.
yeah. So I don't know if it's just a recipe for disaster. It's not if, it's when.
Yeah. Hey, one clarification. When I say paying bills, I'm not saying I don't utilize things like auto pay. What I'm saying is I like to sit down twice a month and I like to reconcile and make sure things were done correctly. Right. Like I do have things set up on auto pay for sure. Um,
Mm,
but I just like to that whole reconciliation process and making sure. And some things I do like push out, like my credit card bill changes every month, right? So that's not an auto pay item for me. That is a sit down and make sure, like you said, go through the transactions and make sure there's nothing legit. There's nothing that's not legit there. Um,
yeah, I guess I should
yeah,
do that a little more, but
which
hey,
is how I found that guy who bought a lot of guns in Pennsylvania on my credit card.
well, yeah, I mean, come on, those are big charges. Like, if I mean, thousands, hundreds of dollars, or thousands of dollars that are being charged, and you're
Thousands.
just like, wait
I
a
don't know what
second.
this guy was doing, but
Yeah, I mean, I see the bill because I'm checking like the websites and stuff like that, but I'm not like, yeah, I can tell, I can add it up in my head really quick to see if it makes sense. Because this month with moving and buying all this furniture and crap that we've had to do, I like roughly rattled off a number in my head after like 30 seconds of thinking about it to my wife of what I think she spent on furniture. And I was like within $500. And she was like, "How do you do that?" I was like, "I don't know."
I just look at it's like the price is right. $10, $15.
That's
Oh,
right.
$150.
She always tells me I should be on The Price is Right. She was, because I go to the grocery store and I'll be able to guess what the amount is, like, within a couple dollars.
Yeah.
This order is gonna be $98, and it's like 97.
I find that harder and harder these days as with inflation and things changing. Like
Oh, Jesus, yeah. Yeah.
I never cease to be amazed. I'm like, that costs what? Like, really? But hey, real quick, Kenny, are we doing anything in the last quarter for a last year push? I assume you're asking us if we're purchasing any more properties. Uh, the answer to that is yes. We have two that we have under contract right now. One of them's out there right now. It's the Charlotte portfolio. So yeah, we're gonna be closing on that here towards the end of this month. Then we have some, at least one more. There's always something hanging out there.
We're always looking at something else.
You damn deal junkie.
Yeah, I
Um,
I think, yeah, we're working on closing a couple things, which is good, but I think really our push for the end of the year is really kind of getting organized and setting up
yeah.
these processes and procedures, and utilizing Kathy to hire, to document things, and hire out virtual assistants, and really kind of get us prepared for the 2023 year, because we're going to be hitting a lot of refinances. So asset management is going to be absolutely huge for us. So tracking those KPIs and managing to the business plan and making sure that we're staying on top of our debt markets and understanding like what kind of debt we can get on properties in order to refinance. So we're paying attention to that today, anticipating refinances 12 months from now. So it's something that we're pushing for every day, is like, hey, all right, well, we're a year into owning a property now, or 14 months, 16 months, whatever. Where are we? Where are we supposed to be? How are we going to get there? Here's our target timeline. And then building in, baking time or seasoning time, right? Because we need to have a solid T3 or T6 in order to refinance. So it's like, okay, well, we have to refinance in 12 months, but we really have 6 months to achieve the business plan.
Oh, and
So
see, and you just brought this back around so nicely. Did you see this, guys? He wrapped this up, and now I'm going to pull that bow.
ah,
So he pulled it all back around. Perfect time. This is why we have Kathy. This is why we brought Kathy in. Is she's going to focus on that organization and getting those processes documented for us. And so Tim and I can focus on making sure we hit our refinance targets, guys, because that's where our eye needs to be right now on
right,
that.
that's where
Not
our value is.
right.
That's the task that nobody else can do. I mean, yes, there are other
Right.
people that can do it, but in our organization, only you and I can be held accountable for that. It's not something you can sub out, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're definitely doing things in the last quarter, like Tim's talking about. We got some things we're closing out, but the focus is really going to be kind of like on the organization, making sure that we're on track to hit those business plans for 2023 and return some awesome capital to our investors. That's always a good thing to do.
Mhm.
Um, But yeah, and then working on our coaching business as well. Making
Oh
moves
yeah.
is definitely going to be a focus for us towards the end of this year and then through 2023.
Yeah, we got a lot of subsequent things that are kind of on the side right now that we're going to be working on, which are important to us that we don't really talk a whole lot about. Um, but yeah, we have a lot of things. It's not always about just buying property. It's there's a lot of other stuff that happens behind the scenes. So um, yeah, I'm really excited about everything that we got coming up towards the end of this year and the beginning of next year. So we'll definitely have a little bit of a slowdown here while we watch what's going on in the debt markets, pay attention to our current properties and hitting our refinance targets and understanding what kind of debt we can get. And if a good deal comes along, it's hard for me to say no, but it's not
Yeah,
like what we just went through over the last, 90 days or so, um, with just closing after closing after closing after closing. So I think we it was definitely a stressful summer, I'll tell you that, but a good one, that's for sure.
yeah.
But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about kind of the struggles that we had to overcome with hiring somebody. I know it's something that we've talked about for a long time, and I know how important it is, but it's not that easy to do because hiring somebody is scary at the end of the day. Like if you're hiring them as a W-2 or a 1099, you're responsible to make sure that they can get paid. And hiring somebody is very easily said, oh, just hire someone. But building out like the list of roles and responsibilities and the tasks that are important for this person to do, like you have to build the business plan. And I remember one day, Tim Vest and I were like, this was when you were dealing with all that contractor stuff down in Colombia. And I was like, look, Tim, it is never going to get easier. We need to sit down and do this right now because it's not going to get easier until we do something like this. And do you remember that?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And we basically made like a shared note or on what is it, iNotes or whatever, what Apple Notes, whatever the hell that app is called. And it just basically went down the list and we made subject lines and made an outline of like, here are all the things related to making moves that we struggle with that we would love for somebody else to do. And here's some stuff that asset management related things like we would want this person to handle. And we just went through and we documented all of the things that we know that we struggle with and that we're always bouncing off of each other last minute, like, hey, did anyone do this? No. All right, I'll do it right now. Like we don't want that anymore. We want it to
Right.
be structured. We want it to be easy. We want to know what to expect because the worst thing that you can get is like a follow-up email from an investor or somebody like, hey, are we supposed to get distributions? And we're like, yes, we know that you're supposed to get distributions and we're calculating them. They just haven't been sent out yet. So being ahead of the eight ball instead of behind it is always important. And we're not perfect. Like we try to do the best that we can, but it's a learning process. And now we've hired somebody to help us be more on schedule with that and more consistent. And we know exactly when things are going out.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, you really hit the nail on the head. It's been this last year has been just an amazing amount of growth for us, but it's also I think been a real reality check on how much we're working on versus in our business.
Oh my
Um,
God. Yeah.
I spent, some of you guys know, I spent like 2.5 weeks basically going down the West Coast. And, I've always had this idea like, hey, I want to do this business and I want to be able to work from anywhere, whenever I want. And that was one of the time, when my daughter's team made that tournament and I was like,
Hmm.
hey, let's just stay out there and spend it's basically spend a month almost driving down the coast. We'll work a little bit, we'll drive. You know what I ended up doing? I ended up working a lot, driving and working, walking around San Diego and working. I mean, I was always working. And it was kind of a reality check of like, man, I've built this business that can't do anything without me right at the moment.
Yeah. And that was what, early July, I think it was.
Into June, early July. Yeah.
Right. And ever since then, we've been trying to like, we started talking about it then because we were just like, oh my God, we can't walk away from this business. And this is not what we set out to do. Like, we need to figure this out. And then nothing happened until, Jesus, maybe the end of August. That's when I was
Right.
just like, dude, like, we got to sit down and figure this out right now. And then we did that. And then it took a little bit of time to talk with Kathy and, you know, basically figure out all of that kind of stuff. And then ultimately, we just did it one day. We're just like, all right, call her now. Like, let's do it. Let's, make the introductions and let's move forward with this thing. And ultimately it's taking action towards it, which is tough, but we knew that we had to do it. But It's scary at the end of the day. Like I said that earlier, it's just like, people throw out who, not how, right? And I do it too. I know I'm guilty. But when you actually get to pulling the trigger on doing something like that, and like, there's a lot of things that go around in your head, like, is this the right hire? Can I afford this? Is this the right thing to do? And honestly, I can say, like, we've had our meeting with her yesterday, and it was just like, oh my God, I'm so glad I have all these things that are outstanding in my email box right now that I know that I can do. I just don't have the time or the capacity to put any energy towards it, and they're not getting done, and they need to get done. So send it to her and it'll be done. And I love that.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I'm looking forward to seeing what she gets done for us. I'm looking forward to some of these organization things because like we were talking when we were talking to her yesterday. Hey guys, little inside, a little inside baseball here. Like Tim and I are sitting here talking about, well, on our naming conventions for our folder structures, is it state first or property first? What is it? And ultimately, at the end of the day, I was like, I don't really give a shit. Just tell me which way and go do it, and I'll just work off that. I'm
Right.
like, it's these little things. It's like I want control over this, and then you realize, no, I
Right.
really don't. I
No.
really don't.
Right.
Um, I don't really care about the control. I just want it done.
Hmm.
Um, and
Yep.
yeah,
And what I like about that is it brings consistency, and then it's multi-purpose, right? It's organization, it's a checklist. It helps us in the future for when we go to sell stuff because we know where everything is, and it's something that we can pass off to virtual assistants and say, "Hey, every time we do this, like go through this and check, boom, 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 boom. Are all these folders named exactly this way? Insert property name and city. We'll give you that." And then every property is the same. Like you should have each one of these documents. And actually, I'll tell you the exact way that that conversation went was we send over a list of our due diligence document request list to sellers when we're buying stuff. And I said, we as sellers should be able to regurgitate that same information. And I was like, why don't we should be able to have a checklist that identifies all of these items that could be asked for during a due diligence process because when people a lot what we do is value add multifamily, right? So we're buying stuff from tired owners and people that aren't managing it correctly, et cetera and so forth. We don't also want to be that seller. We want to be able to say, oh, here's our document request, here's everything that you could need, blah 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 blah. We're on the eight ball, it's organized, our financials look good. We can ask for top dollar when we go to sell our stuff because we're managing it professionally and we're organized. So
yeah,
yeah, it's a small investment today and an organizational effort today for when we go to sell stuff in the future, which is ultimately going to benefit us and our investors. So it's like it's a multifaceted um, investment, right?
yeah,
Investment
yeah,
of time and resources.
yeah. And then to your point, this pays off, right? Like like you said, when you go to the seller, you don't want to be that seller. We do some things. It's like, hey, the clock starts once you deliver your DD documents to us, right?
Mhm.
And 6 days later, you're like,
Where
where are
are
the
they?
DD docs?
I wanna
It's like,
send them immediately, like, boop,
right, like I want to
DocuSigned, boom, here
I want to start your clock 10 minutes after the DocuSign, right? Like,
that's right.
yeah, and it's like, hey, your due diligence documents are there. Let's get that clock started because hey guys, like when you're selling, the last thing you want is your property just tied up indefinitely.
Yeah,
You want
especially
those.
in today's day and age with rates changing drastically overnight.
Yeah, especially if there's any chance whatsoever that the buyer can't perform, like, you wanna know that sooner rather than later because,
Mhm.
"Oh, wait a minute, when I took my property to market, rates were at 6%. Well, damn, they're at 7.5 now."
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is significant.
yeah, that's huge. Just ask anybody buying a single family home right now,
Oh my
what they
god,
can
yeah.
afford.
I think the Fed is supposed to raise rate another 75 bips later this month. Is that right?
Sure.
Who knows anymore? But, I mean, I don't wanna get into that, but yeah. All right. Passing that subject. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because we could talk about that for a whole nother show.
But wait a minute, Al, you're talking about those refis and raising rates. I mean, you weren't underwriting to 2.5% interest rates, in
And the peak
2023.
investment cap rate. Oh man. All the good times, huh? Remember those?
Yeah, they were like last week.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's changing fast, folks. That's the joke.
Yep.
Um, yeah, real fast. But hey, who not how, guys. I mean, it's a real thing, and can read that book 15 times, but it's easy to read, hard to execute on.
That's right.
but
And
you,
ultimately, like, we're doing this show because we wanted to show you that we talk about these things and we believe in these things, and we too struggle with doing some things. So we're not perfect, right? It's just kind of a inside the look behind the curtain of, yeah, all these things that we do and say we believe, and we're working on them in order to execute it, but it still takes time and effort on everyone's part in order to do it. So on our side of it, it's still growth, right? Because it's something that we've never done before. It's outside of our comfort zone. Ultimately, I'm glad that we did it, and we most definitely should have done it sooner, but we are where we are and we're dealing with it today, and we're never looking back.
yeah, yeah, never looking back. And guys, like think about this. Like I got it sitting up there. The 4 hour work week.
Mm.
I read that book, and I bet you I read that book 8 years ago, and I'm still just starting to implement some of the things and the concepts in that book. Um,
I've never read that book before. I
okay,
probably should.
so 4 hour work week and Who Not How really good complement to each other.
Mm,
Because
mm,
Who Not How talks about like finding who's, and 4 hour work week helps you figure out how to find who's, right?
interesting.
Um, but they're a good complement to each other. So I highly recommend reading both of them.
Alright, I'm gonna have to add that to my I'm reading the One More Thing, whatever, by Ed Milet right now, which is good. I like it.
Well, that'll give me time to send you this. I'll send you
Oh,
a
yeah,
copy
there
when
you
we.
go.
There you go.
Alright, guys. Well, that's all the time we got for today. Appreciate you tuning in. We're making progress and strides and making changes in our own business, and we hope that you guys are as well. Identifying those goals and those targets, and even if you didn't accomplish what you wanted to at the beginning of the year, there's still time to finish it before the end of the year. So just go out there and do it. I mean, I know, we're talking about how difficult it was for us to do it, but hey, we did it. So now we're on the other side of the fence in that scenario. So we're just looking for the next fence to hop and continue to grow and put the right people in the right seats, and always just trying to be better, be 1% better every day.
Yeah. Hey, Tommy, good to see you. Go Dodgers. Take out. I think you're playing the Padres. I'm not sure, but if you are, take them out. They killed my Mets. So there you go.
Yeah.
Hey
All
guys,
right. See y'all later.
have a great week, guys.